So CNN is continuing to make a bunch of moves, and there's a lot to criticize here. Now, Crystal and I had this discussion recently. Which is worse? Is CNN Classic worse, where what they do is both sidesism on steroids? So everything all day long is false equivalence. Well, both sides have a point. The Republicans say this, the Democrats say that, and you decide, or let's split the difference and be in the middle no matter what the facts are. That's CNN Classic. That's the original formula. It is a false equivalence bias, and it's a, defense of both wings of the establishment bias. Then new CNN in the Trump era became basically resistance, liberal, anti-Trump. But the thing that was frustrating about it was that it was anti-Trump in all the worst ways imaginable. It was always like the word policing and the, hair on fire over political incorrectness. It was honestly a kind of coverage that, if anything, fueled the rise of Trump more, because they didn't know how to substantively go after him. They didn't know how to make it about, his tax policy or his foreign policy or the various authoritarian proposals he has here at home, whether it's signing a pro-torture executive order as he did, or saying that drug dealers should be shot. They should get capital punishment. So if they went after Trump in an intelligent way, I would just flat out be supportive. I'd be like, oh, this is great. They're doing a good job. But they didn't do that. In fact, it was quite the opposite. They did a terrible job going after him. But the discussion Chris and I had is, which is worse? Like, sort of the mindless anti-Trumpism and the mindless resistance liberal approach, where it's just like basically corporate democratic hackery down the line on everything. And, these are like the people who are yes-queening Nancy Pelosi. And, they think Chuck Schumer is based, right? Like, that's what MSNBC does, and that's what CNN was doing in the Trump era, right? Whether it's Don Lemon, or if it was Chris Cuomo, or if it was Brian Stelter, who was recently axed. Well, now CNN is trying to go back to CNN Classic, the neutral approach. So here's what happened. This guy, John Harwood, he said, personal news. Today's my last day at CNN. Proud of my work. Thanks to my colleagues, I've been lucky to serve with the best in American media: St. Petersburg Times, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, the NBC family, CNN. By the way, that's him listing his resume for some future endeavor. He wants somebody to reach out to him and, offer him a job. Look forward to figuring out what's next. So, that's John Harwood. Now, let me say this up front. Am I a fan of John Harwood? No, I'm not. Crystal made the point to me the other day, he was almost like a Mitt Romney type as a reporter, almost like a sort of a conservative, like his feelings lean in a conservative direction. He kind of masks it, and he's first and foremost a reporter, so that shines through more, but his sensibilities are moderate in the sense of within the DC establishment, within the swamp, I am a centrist, right? So I'm not a fan of this guy. I'm not. But I'm going to show you here what was happening on his way out. Like, this is the sort of stuff he was saying, and now he's going gonzo. So this is the stuff, presumably, that made CNN management go, we don't like it. This is the wrong direction, and we don't want to have stuff like this on our air anymore.
The issues that he's talking about are inherently political, but I think it's also important to say that the core point he made in that political speech about a threat to democracy is true. Now, that's something that's not easy for us as journalists to say. We're brought up to believe there's two different political parties with different points of view, and we don't take sides in honest disagreements between them. But that's not what we're talking about. These are not honest disagreements. The Republican Party right now is led by a dishonest demagogue. Many, many Republicans are rallying behind his lies about the 2020 election and other things as well. And a significant portion, or a sufficient portion of the constituency that they're leading, attacked the Capitol on January 6th violently by offering pardons or suggesting pardons for those people who violently attacked the Capitol, which you've been pointing out numerous times this morning. Donald Trump made Joe Biden's point for him.
So, in other words, he goes out there and says something that I think is relatively obvious. It's difficult to argue against that based on the facts. And surprise, surprise, this is when he's let go. This is when he's fired. This is when CNN management goes, man, too far. Way too far. Remember, one of the other things that we learned from reporting on this, it may have been Axios, they said you're not allowed to refer to the election being stolen as the big lie. You're not allowed to do that because, that's alienating conservative viewers. So look, if you say don't alienate conservative viewers gratuitously, don't alienate conservative viewers in an asinine fashion, don't generalize about all conservatives or all Republicans or even all Trump voters, I'm totally with that. But what they're saying here is take objectivity and empirical research, put it to the side, say that takes a back seat to protecting the feelings of conservative voters. And this is exactly when John Harwood was fired. Now, there is some speculation that he knew about a month ago he was going to be let go. And so the decision had already been made. But, on his way out, he's saying, hey, just so you know, I need to say this for the record. Now, was John Harwood saying this all along? I don't know. I certainly didn't see it if he was. And if anything, that would also be an indictment of Harwood, right? Because it's like, dude, you should have been saying this all along because it's true. Now, again, he wasn't making any sort of cringe resistance liberal argument here. I think what he's saying is sort of, at this point, just basic. Because you have Trump over on Truth Social saying, I demand to be reinstated as president now, or at the very least, redo the election. There's no legal path to do that. There's no precedent for that. There's no process where you can do that. So for him to call this out is like, well, finally, thank God, people in the media are saying the obvious thing. And now he's being let go. So apparently, Jim Acosta is terrified as well. Jim Acosta is definitely super cringe and a guy who's done a terrible job. Sort of like Brian Stelter. Like, Brian Stelter was just bad at his job, so I didn't care that he was being let go. Jim Acosta, I won't really care if he gets let go. Don Lemon, I don't really care if he gets let go. This guy, Harwood, wasn't nearly as cringe as those people, even though I probably disagree with him on most things, but he's being let go. So the through line here is you need to appease conservative voters and be Fox News light or just flat out be Fox News. So you have, Fox News represents the propaganda arm of the Republican Party, including, say, the Mitch McConnell wing. It's not just the Trump wing. Then you have One American News and Newsmax that they are the propaganda arm for the Trump wing of the party. They're just pro-Trump propaganda. Then you had MSNBC, which is resistance, liberal, Democratic Party propaganda, anti-Trump reflexively. And you had CNN, which played a similar role in the Trump era, but now CNN is going, at the very least, we're going full false equivalence. So in other words, you have a media landscape where truth takes a back seat for all of your options. Everything on the menu is biased to a mind-bogglingly high degree. Everything. You want resistance, liberalism, and corporate Democrat propaganda, turn on MSNBC. You want false equivalence and establishment defense for both sides, turn on CNN. You want pro-Trump propaganda, One American News or Newsmax. You want Republican Party propaganda, Fox News. But, I think it's telling that this is one of the few noteworthy times that Harwood said something true, and it happened to be his last appearance on the network. So they are cleaning house. And, I think I have to retract the statement that I made when talking to Crystal about this. I said, look, I think the false equivalence type of propaganda, the neutrality at all costs propaganda, I think that's just as bad as the resistance, liberal, reflexively anti-Trump propaganda. I was wrong. I think the resistance, liberal, reflexively anti-Trump propaganda, given the current state of affairs, given the current facts on the ground, and given the direction and Trump's trajectory and things he's espoused recently and things he wants to do, I think the reflexive anti-Trump position is much more rational than this sort of stuff. Than the, false equivalence all day long, don't hurt anybody's feelings. So here we are. You have a CNN reporter who was axed and just so happens on the way out to be saying things that are kind of banal and true, but they appear really controversial because they hurt snowflake right-wing feelings. I don't care about those feelings. The truth needs to come first. So, here we are. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.